our test facility. Let's see what we're rolling out this week. Looks like we got ourselves a Mazda 3 Sedan. But it's not your typical Mazda 3 Sedan that starts around $21,000 with a 155 horsepower engine. This one's been modified a bit for your driving pleasure. And on the outside, it looks like any other Mazda 3 except for this little emblem telling you it's the Sky Active G Turbo with all-wheel drive. Under the hood is a 250 horsepower turbo hooked to an all-wheel drive system. 0 to 60 times somewhere around 5.6 to 6 seconds, depending on what publication you believe. We'll be taking this out in the real world to see how it performs. Fuel economy is listed at 23 in the city and 32 on the highway. We'll also be taking it out to do some fuel economy testing for real world numbers. By the way, if you're a cheapskate and don't like the idea of putting premium fuel in a Japanese sedan, you can do so on this. Standard unleaded, but drops the horsepower down to 227, and your fuel economy will drop as well. If you didn't want the 250 horsepower, then what'd you buy this thing for in the first place, right? We also tested and did a video on another Asian hot rod sedan, the 2021 Hyundai Sonata Inline with 291 horsepower. We'll have a link to that video at the end of this video. Go to the end, click and watch. We also tested and did a video on the Honda Civic Type R, the vehicle we all really want but can't afford. We'll have a link for that video at the end of this video as well. Just go to the end, click and watch. So you're getting 3 videos for the price of 1, which is free. One of the first things we do when we get a vehicle is take the headlights out in the dark and see how they work. Looks like we have just one large bulb on each side. Now let's give it a go. It's dark enough. Let's take these lights out and see what they do. Look pretty bright. Here we have the low beams on the wall 100 feet away, very bright. High beam, very bright again. Here we have the high beams on a building 300 feet away, again very bright. Good widespread, good low beam. Actually reaches out, I'm very impressed. Here's what the rearview camera looks like when you put it in reverse. A little on the grainy side, but it works. And what's all this? Smoke? It must be a ghost. This place is haunted. And I just noticed the headlights swivel in the same direction as the steering wheel. Great for taking corners. Overall, I'm very impressed with the headlight system. No complaints whatsoever. Let's look at the cabin. We have a nice glove box with plenty of room. Climate controls, very simple to use. We get a well-designed gauge cluster with lots of useful information. A decent infotainment screen. You have a normal driving mode or a sport mode by simply pressing this lever. And if you want to shift for yourself manually, you can push the stick over it and use that. Or the best feature of all, the pedal shifters mounted on the steering wheel where they can always be reached regardless of the steering wheel position, unlike the Italians in Nissan who put their pedal shifters on the steering column where they cannot be reached when you're taking corners, which is dumb. They belong on the steering wheel. I say this in all my videos, and I'm going to repeat it until the day I die. They belong on the steering wheel. Get it? Number 2, Mazda's trying to get fancy with these computer control knobs, attempting to mimic the Germans like BMW, Mercedes, and the like, to make the vehicle look more classy and expensive. And for the most part, it's a simple system that works. But I've been trying to remove these presets and put stations I want for 3 days now, and I've pushed every button, turned every dial, and I can't do it. Now the first thing you're going to leave in the comment section is, well, why don't you look in the owner's manual? But see, you don't get it. I should not have to look in the owner's manual. This is something that should be done very simply by pressing a knob right away. don't like this. Eventually I will read the owner's manual perhaps and get this all erased. I've done it before on Mazdas, but I forgot how to do it. Now the first two gripes I had aren't that important, but I do have one that really bothers me. And that's the heads-up display that reflects information in the windshield. In our case, it's reflecting off the rock, which is an illusion. It's really in the windshield. Now, why would somebody at Mazda design a head-up display that you can't turn off? That is always in your face. Yes, you can temporarily turn it off. Active driving display content. Just click on the little check mark and it will go away. See, now it's gone. The problem is you turn the vehicle off, start it again, and the display comes right up again. And I don't want to scroll through this every time I start the car to turn off the heads-up display. In situations like this, you have to be smarter than the Mazda engineers. And here's how you disconnect the heads-up display permanently with a black sock. I've done this before with other Mazdas, but unfortunately I forgot the sock was there. And probably a year later, they're probably still there. But that's how you do it if you don't want to look at the heads-up display. Okay, I'm probably spending too much time about my griping about little things that you probably don't care about. So let's do the second half of the video. Get away from show and tell and do some driving. We'll do that right now. And before I forget, this is also available in a hatchback as well as a four-door sedan. So you can have the turbo both ways. I prefer the sedan myself. And yes, I checked. We do get a spare tire with this vehicle. A lot of vehicles you don't. And you're wondering about the price tag. Here it is, loaded with everything. Not cheap. But you're getting a genuine Japanese car made in Japan by Japanese workers. From my experience, that's worth a few bucks right there. Now back to driving. The power steering on Mazdas has always been excellent. On this 3 turbo with all-wheel drive, it's even better. Quick, responsive, decent feel. Something BMWs used to have, but don't anymore. Maybe BMW should buy a Mazda and see how it's done. As we do in all of my videos, we're going to take some mild speed humps around 20 miles per hour. See how the suspension performs on impact. Here comes bump number 1. Pretty smooth for a small car. Number 2. Number 3. And the nasty one. Ooh, felt that one. I've been driving this on city streets for several days now, and the ride is pretty smooth on potholes and other irregularities, so don't let that one nasty speed bump that made all that noise discourage you. This is a pretty smooth riding vehicle, aside from tire noise, which we'll talk about later when we get on the freeway. Let's take a little highway trip, see what type of fuel economy we get. Reset everything to 0. This suspension does a pretty good job of going over potholes. It's pretty smooth, but these tires make a lot of noise. I hear the rumbling coming right up to my feet. Well, just the way it is, I guess. You'll get used to it. Even though the tire and wheel noise is excessive, in my opinion, the wind noise is very low. So it does have that going for it. And the car is reasonably quiet. Aside from the tire and wheel noise, that is. We're coming to the end of our trip. I'm going to pull over and see what the fuel economy reading is. 29.2 mpg. That's similar to what I got on the Hyundai Type N turbo engines and the Honda Civic Type R turbo engines. 29 to 32 was the range in extreme circumstances. And I think if we were on level ground, we could get 32 on this. This was a slight upgrade. uphill rather. Let's do a quick 0 to 60. We're going to take this on some backcountry winding roads and see if we're getting our money's worth here. And away we go. Not the quickest engine I've ever used, but very smooth and quiet. It definitely has more power than the smaller four-cylinder engines they use, no doubt about that. According to other reviewers, one of the biggest complaints they had was the transmission reluctance to downshift when doing sporty driving, but I don't experience that issue, and I have it in the normal mode. And now I just put it in the sport mode, and the transmission shifting in lower gear is even quicker, so I don't see what their complaint was. Maybe they didn't know there was a sport mode button there. Earlier in the video, we showed you how the headlights swivel in the same direction as the steering wheel. And why do you want that? You want that on roads like this, so you can see better around corners, because there's a lot of mountain lions and skunks out here, and I don't want to hit one. Had a skunk out here about 4 weeks ago. The car didn't smell very good, and they were not happy when I gave the vehicle back, I can tell you. With well-balanced weight distribution and all-wheel drive, the sedan handles like a champ. Far more than what the average person could ever use. That plus these fantastic headlights make driving on this backcountry road a real pleasure. Oh yeah, and the smooth engine power too. Great wide power band. Just in case you're asking, I did take the Honda Civic Type R Turbo and the Hyundai Veloster Type N Turbo on this road last month, and yes, both of them will beat this vehicle on a nose-to-nose competition, but this is still about 80% of the performance you get on the other two. I don't think there's really anything to complain about. A very nice sports sedan that delivers. So what's my take on this Mazda 3 Turbo? I think it's a little bit on the pricey side, but if you're looking for a vehicle that looks harmless on the outside, but it's guts on the inside, this certainly might be for you.